Ooh, there we go. Now we're recording. Hello, Jaci. How are you?
It's actually Jackie, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
it's all
Oh
good.
my gosh. See, we just met. There you go. I should have checked that.
It's okay.
I
It's all good. I get that
apologize.
all the time, like seriously, constantly. But
Oh,
it's all good.
okay,
So
I'm glad I'm not the only one then.
yeah, so I get it all the time.
Okay, Jackie, I apologize. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you for joining me. I was this random person that reached out in one of the Facebook groups and I saw that you do co-living and I was just like, ooh, I have to meet this person. I have to see what is she doing? How is she doing it? Because I have a pad split and it's co-living. It's, a brand, right?
Yeah.
And there's definitely different options out there when it comes to co-living. So I thought it would be great to have you on my podcast to give your perspective, how you're doing it. But I'm curious, how did you get into real estate to begin with?
Yeah, no. So I actually started with co-living back
Ooh.
in 2017. My business, well, actually, I bought a property as a primary resident, but it was a 7 bedroom property. It was like 2,400 square feet, and so we just
Ooh.
rented out all the other bedrooms, and I lived in it as the primary resident, and like it worked out great. My business partner helped me figure out all the systems. We got all of our systems figured out, and like we've just kind of done rinse and repeat. So like we've been
Ooh.
doing co-living the whole time. And like the model works on our sober living properties too. So
Ooh, okay. So that sounds like house hacking to me, right? You were
yeah,
in it and then you rented out the rooms, right? So there's
yes.
different flavors of this. This is
Oh yeah.
great. Okay, so are you still house hacking or have you moved out of that and rented the room out?
Yeah, no, I've moved out of it. It's been a minute, but I lived in at least 3 of our properties. My business partner has lived in 2 of them. Our property manager has lived in one of them. So like, yeah, it was great actually because our systems are set up in such a way that like we have it we don't get rid of living rooms, we don't get rid of dining rooms, we leave those common areas and stuff. So it's really really comfortable and it's like really community focused. So we liked living in them. So I lived in them for years and we just rinse and repeat. So
Yeah.
all of our properties are like that.
Okay, so you say all. How many do you have?
We're managing quite a few now, actually. I personally do not have that many, but we are managing for third parties now too. So we've got
Oh,
bunches, and we're up in northern Colorado, so that's our primary like where we've got them all. So
okay. Okay. So did you start out with managing as a third party for others as well, or was it that you started managing your own and then kind of branched out?
yeah, we started managing our own and then kind of branched out. So we worked with a bunch of friends, and friends of friends, and like we're like, hey, do you want
Yes.
to like do co-living in your house? And they were like, yeah, that sounds great. So
Yeah.
we just managed for them, and it kind of kept going. It's been pretty great.
Yeah. So just to like, I guess take a step back for anybody who doesn't know what house hacking is, or why would you want to do that? So you're living in the property and it's just you and you've got this huge house, like how you described it was 2,400 square feet, right? And so how many rooms is that? How many bedrooms?
That house is 7 bedrooms.
Whoa. And did you add rooms or it was just that way?
We got really lucky with that house. We bought it with all of those rooms basically there. Like we added one door and that was it. We didn't have to put up any walls. So it was
Nice.
really nice setup. But
Nice. Okay. So you already had the rooms, you rent out the rooms, and okay. So I'm curious, like, what do the numbers look like for something like that? So, because you're saying you've talked to your friends, everybody's like, yeah, I want to do that. Why would they want to do that?
right. So with a house like that, it's a like I said, 2,400 square foot house. It's basically 7 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. So when you're renting that out as a single family house, you're probably where we are at. You're probably going to get maybe like 2,500, maybe 2,700 for the house as a whole.
Yeah.
But we rent it out as 775 all included for each room. So that's,
Ooh.
7 times 775 is $5,400 a month. So you are
Nice.
really getting a lot more income coming in. And like, as a single person living in a house that size, like most people aren't going to be able to make that mortgage by themselves. So
Right.
like it really, really helps. Like the house hacking really starts just because you're trying to make the mortgage
Yeah.
on a house that's probably too big for you. But like in a lot of cases, like I want to live with all my friends. So that was my
Nice.
goal, but you know, it ended
Right.
up being something better.
Right. So you more than covered the mortgage in that
Yeah.
case, right?
Yes.
And so, okay, but then what about the utilities? So utilities are all included. Now you've got more people using the electricity, the water, the gas. Did you still see good cash flow even? Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like on that $75 per room, like what is that? 7 times 75 is, you know, 525. I mean, our utilities all included, like including internet, are usually under 600.
Okay.
So it just covers it. And then I mean, you're still looking at what, 4,900 a month?
Yeah.
4,800. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So it's a great opportunity. Like you said, you were single, you wanted to be close to your friends, right? And you have this asset. You're not using all of the space. You need
Right.
help covering the mortgage. So why not house hack? And then that's the natural progression of, okay, well, now I am ready to get my own place. Or I'm curious, did you use like conventional financing then to get another house and live in it? So living in it, you can say it's your primary and you get better terms, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, mortgage rules say that you have to live in it for 12 months. So like follow the rules. So I
Yes.
lived, yeah. So, but with that first one, you know, lived in it for a year and then we were able, like I was able to go ahead and buy another one and live in that one for the next year. And I did that 3 times. So it worked out
Yes.
really well, you know?
Yes. So, and with conventional, then you can get as low as what, putting 3% down or something like that, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, for first time home buyers, it's like
Yeah.
3%. Unless you're like get a really good program, you can sometimes get 0%, but like I
Yeah.
got the 3% one. So that first house, I mean, I think that first house, I think we paid 350 for, and like I only had to put 25 in, including the like updates and stuff and furnishing
Ooh.
it. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it was yeah, it worked out really well. So and I made that money
Nice.
back right away. But
Nice.
yeah.
Okay, so you talked about, so you got those three properties to start,
Yeah.
right? I'm
Yeah.
sure it's the first of like first three of many, right?
Yes.
And you mentioned systems.
Mhm.
So you were starting from scratch on building your systems. Is that
Yes and no. So,
okay?
like, I had actually lived in like other co-living type houses in the Midwest. My business partner has lived in co-ops in Texas. So, like, he was living in
Ooh,
the co-ops that were founded by the Whole Foods people in Austin. And those co-ops have amazing systems, and those systems have been in place since the 70s, right? So they have like conflict resolution and communication and like all sorts of systems and stuff. So we borrowed some of that like
yeah.
structure and put it into our houses. So we have conflict resolution systems. We have a whole chore system set up where like we
Ooh,
have a chore board that like gets changed with a wheel on it that gets changed once a week. And we've got like a point system on it for accountability. So like everybody can see when other people aren't doing their chores, and that works out just in and of itself works out super well. But I mean, we also have systems for like fridge space and pantry space and storage space and animals and like bathrooms, just everything you can possibly think of. We have a system for it because if you don't, then everything like people are going to figure out their own way to do it. And it's probably not going to be the way you want them to. So,
right, right. Yes. Okay. So how long then did it take you to really stabilize and have all your systems in place and just like move on to the next one then?
yeah, I mean, actually, we started out with pretty decent systems in place,
Yeah.
but it has been a refinement process over the last 7 years, getting those down. But like within the first 3, 4, we got pretty solid, and it's been really good for the last couple of years. So very
Yeah. Nice. Okay. So you talk about the conflict resolution, the chores. The chores, I am super curious about, because I know I've done my own version of that where it's like, okay, everybody take a turn, but I don't know for sure how, if that's happening or not. I don't know. It's not a part of any of the systems that I have as far as like keeping track of who's doing what. So I'm curious, like, is that built in then, or is that something on the side? And are you personally going and kind of resetting it or assigning people? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so everything is really like laid out, right? So we have a bunch of chores already defined. So there's Captain Kitchen, and there's Appliance Love, and there's like Knit
Ooh.
Yard Ninja and stuff like that, right? So every single chore, like we have a whole sheet on the, like, it's not just one sheet, it's like 10 sheets on the board
Ooh.
that have all this like house information on it. But the chores are all laid out in terms of like, okay, if you're Yard Ninja this week, this is exactly what we expect you to do. If you're Captain Kitchen this week, this is exactly what we expect you to do, because everybody comes from different backgrounds, right? Like my
Yes.
my level of cleanliness is different than my boyfriend's level of cleanliness, and that's true for everybody. So we want to make sure that like everybody's on the same page about what expectations are. So that like so one of our chores is actually to spin that chore wheel and to like tally up the points and make sure. So like along with the chore wheel, right next to it, we have like a whole point board essentially that like,
Yeah.
if you do your chore, put this pin on it. If you do more than your chore, put this other pin on it. So then everybody can see
Ooh.
how much people are doing, and they hold each other accountable. So
Nice.
yeah, it works out really well. And having those laid out, and those like basically explaining like, hey, when it's your turn to clean the bathroom, here's all of the pro
Yes.
tips for how you clean the bathroom, and like this is what we expect. So, and it works out really
Yes.
well. It's
I
not
like
unreasonable either. So
So it almost sounds like a game. Like, what do the points, what do they get with the points? Do they
um,
just get the bragging rights?
for the most part, bragging rights. We do incentives though. So like, because we've
Okay.
got so many houses that we're managing now, we actually do like a, hey, this house got so many points this week that like, and here's a gift card and stuff like that. So
Ooh,
yeah, like once a
yeah,
month, stuff like that. So
I
yeah,
love it. Okay, so we've touched on getting the or having the property. How are you finding the properties?
yeah. The most of the properties that I bought, we bought before the rates went up. So like we were actually on the MLS, like doing it that way. Now we're looking for like sub twos. We're
Yeah.
connecting with people who already have properties. A lot of what we're doing right now is taking on third party owners. So that's people who already have properties, and they're just like, hey, can I turn this into co-living? Can you help me do this? And
Okay.
that's most of what we're doing right now. But we're still actively looking for like creative deals and stuff too. So
Okay, good to know. Okay, so you've got your lead gen part. We've talked about when they're when your members or your tenants are in the property. How do you find the members anyway? Like, how do you start with that part of it, the marketing?
yeah, for sure. So I know PadSplit is basically a software platform that finds them for you,
Yes.
but we're not PadSplit, so we're doing it
Right.
ourselves, right? But the property management software that we use actually syndicates out to like Zillow and Rent.com and PadFinder and all those other places. So we have ads up on those sites, but honestly, most of our tenants come from Facebook Marketplace
Ooh,
and stuff like that. So but our
yeah.
ads are also saying very explicitly, like, hey, this is an intentional community. We want to foster community. You're moving into an awesome place that we want to be your home for, months or years. And people really respond to that. And they also self-weed themselves out if
Yes.
they don't want that. So that works out really well.
Interesting. Okay, so I want to pick on that little thread there. Like, how have you had members who come in and then it's like, oh yeah, this is not a good fit?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. But we have month to month. So all of our members are on their own individual lease. We always start them out month to month. And so like if they don't think it's going to be a good fit, they usually tell us right away. And we're like, cool, that's fine. Thanks for the heads up. Like we'll
Right.
rent that room out to someone else. So yeah.
Right, right. So I like the idea of the month to month. So you're not dealing with short-term rental issues or regulations or any of that kind of stuff that a lot of cities are doing, right? So and with it being at least a month, then it's not like you're having to turn over everything every day or every week, because again, short-term rentals, it could be anywhere from a day to a few days or a couple of weeks, and you're constant, it requires a lot more work, right? You're really
Yeah.
having to touch it a lot more often. So you're doing month to month. So I'm curious, have you had people push back and say, well, I really only want to be here a few weeks? Is there something I can do for that?
Actually not really. Like we have had people be like, "Hey, I'm only going to be around for 3 months." And that's actually worked out fantastic because we're like, "Sweet deal. Okay, we know in advance we can get this room filled before you even leave. Like we're set."
Right.
So, yeah.
That's a good point. So what is the average stay then? You said 3 months. Is it?
That actually our average stay, so like I said, we've been doing this since 2017. We have two, I think at least two residents who have been with us the entire 7 years.
Wow.
Our average stay is like 20 plus months. Like people really like living in our houses. So our
Nice.
turnover is super low. And like we actually have a 97% occupancy across the board. And it's been that way the entire time. Like we've never had less than like a 3% vacancy rate.
Wow. Wow. That is awesome. So you've got members who are staying long periods of time. Then how do you handle rent increases?
Actually, we really haven't increased the rent
Okay.
hardly at all. Like, so for the most part, we just don't increase the rent, and we haven't had to because I know that like property tax increases happen everywhere and stuff. But one thing that we end up doing is we protest every single year. We go and protest
Ooh.
any kind of property tax raises, and you can do this anywhere. You can protest your property tax raises anywhere. And since nobody does it, usually if you bother to do it in the first place, you get it. So like our property taxes haven't gone up, and we haven't needed to raise the rents.
Okay, so how do you justify fighting that? Like, it's just the same property. We haven't had any big renovations. Is that okay?
Yep,
Got
that's basically it. Like we
it.
didn't
Okay,
change anything this year. Like, so yeah.
right. Ooh, yes. So that's something that anybody, whether you're an investor or not, on your own primary, you can do that. I don't think many people know that at all.
Yeah, I didn't even know that until my business partner was like, "Oh yeah, we're going to protest the property taxes." I'm like, "That's a thing?" So
Yeah, yeah.
great. Yeah.
Right. A golden nugget. This podcast is gonna be full of golden nuggets here. That's one right there. Okay, so you've got people staying a good while. You're doing the month to month thing, which is great. You're not having to deal with the short-term rental stuff. And it's considered, because it's at least 30 days, it's considered midterm rental. You mentioned you're not closing out or making bedrooms out of the living rooms or common areas. That is something that Pad Split recommends, because you want to make the most of the space that you have. And the feedback that they had received was people are not really using the living room. It can actually increase the conflict between the members. If you've got a TV in there, they're going to fight over the TV. If you have a couch in there, you might have guests that are invited to stay over when they're not really paying for their part like everybody else is, and then that causes conflict. So how do you navigate that while keeping that space and keeping that community feel?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. I know that's what Pad Split recommends doing. And when you don't have any systems in place for dealing with conflict, absolutely. Like there's always the possibility of conflict. I mean, in
Yeah.
any given space, like there's always the possibility of conflict. But what we've done is really embrace that though, and like provide the systems for it. So we have like a 5-on-5 process, which is our conflict resolution process, which allows, like, it gives them a basically systematized way of communicating with one another to resolve conflicts. And we have that full living room space. We have a full living room set in there. We put a TV in there with a Chromecast, and like we've never ever had an issue with that. Even
Wow.
like we have guest policies in our lease. We have pet policies in our lease. We have guest policies for both out of state, or not out of state, out of town and in town guests. We have and we have our property manager walk through the property once a month and like looking for, making sure everything's kept up, making sure nobody's like staying on the couch for forever, and like checking the communal supplies, like, dish soap and hand soap and toilet paper and garbage, but like all of the stuff that, like, so we do mitigate a lot of that those things that could potentially cause conflict by making sure that,
Yeah.
like, they don't have to worry about buying toilet paper. They don't have to worry about buying garbage bags. We'll take care of that. But they also like have this system available to them that we encourage them to use and teach them how to use, where like so-and-so's TV is too loud at 10 o'clock at night. Okay, well, here's the system. Did you talk to them? Let us know when you talk to them. Tell us how it goes. If you need a moderator, we'll moderate. But like, for the most
Right.
part, we haven't had hardly any issues because we're supplying these systems for them to communicate. And we want to foster that sense of community, because like there's a loneliness epidemic, right? Like, and when you have just a house that's a hallway with a bunch of rooms and just a kitchen, and that's the only place they have to go, because there's no third spaces anymore, right? Like there's
Yeah.
no places people can go for free anymore to just hang out. So we want to be able to provide that and like foster that community, because I mean, you're in sub two too, right? Like community is important.
Exactly.
So yeah, we want to like really foster that and like provide these spaces for people to just be. Along those same lines, though, our houses are in A and B neighborhoods. Our tenants tend to be young professionals, retirees, like freshly divorced folks. So it's not necessarily like people who are just fresh out of jail either. These are professionals. A lot, like in the last year, I had 3 guys tell me they owned landscaping businesses. So like these are not necessarily people who are going to be causing those types of problems either.
Yeah. That was going to be my next question, is what kind of neighborhoods are you in, and what is the clientele, right? What kind of members are you getting? Because for there to be little conflict, it's like, are you pulling from the same pool? Like, do they just have so many common things already that they work, they work well together, they connect well together? So it's interesting. It seems like you've got a mix though of people.
Yeah, yeah. In any given house, we'll have a mix too. Like I lived in one of the houses that had, I think, 3 people under 25, and then like I'm in my 30s, and then I think one other person was in their 40s, and a 65-year-old, and just it's all over the place, and they all have different like views on life, and that's
Yeah.
great. And we love being able to like have all of those different people living together peacefully, and it's been really awesome to see.
That's awesome. So I know for my pad split, what I did, I didn't want to close off all of the common area space either. I wanted to have some space at least. And so we kept the dining room and part of the living room to make a workspace kind of area. And it's been interesting because I did a pizza party. I tried to have a pizza party not too long ago, and coordinated it. Wanted to make sure most everybody was going to be there the time that I was bringing it, and nobody showed up. Like they all thanked me. They were all excited about it, but it was like, I guess it just ended up, things came up or whatever. They ate the stuff, because I went back a few days later and the desserts were gone. The pizza was gone. So I was like, okay, well, without being there, I found it to be a challenge to say, okay, how am I going to create more of the community feel to this? I mean, the living room isn't there. That's another bedroom, but we still have the dining room. We have a pool. We got the workspace. We got 2 kitchens.
Oh, nice.
So it's how are you fostering that? Do you have like game night, or what do you try to do to help with that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Well, for one, we have like a group text going for all of the like all of the housemates in a given house. We're
Ooh,
using like
okay.
WhatsApp or Token. I think we're using WhatsApp right now,
Okay.
because it's easier to add and remove members. But yeah, so we have a group chat going all the time. We have a group like a house email list that everybody gets put on,
Okay.
and we actually do hold a potluck once a year for every house. And like
Ooh,
so yeah, and the potluck like works out really well. We usually like we try to make it mandatory as much as possible. We usually get really good turnout. Like
okay.
it's usually most of the people show up. So
Nice.
but yeah, it is hard to foster community, and I think a lot of it has to do with the communication systems that we have in place. And like even with our chore system, like the person whose job it is that week to do the chore board has to text or email the entire house and be like, hey, here's all the points for this week, here's how the house did. So like there's always that communication going on, and a lot of the times the people in the house will actually instigate like game nights or movie nights or stuff like that. So
Okay.
because we don't
Interesting.
live in the houses.
Right, right. Yeah, it's hard when you're not there. It's you only have to go on like when you're there
Yeah.
at those points. Like, and I guess that's something. How often are you going? Because you mentioned a property manager. So do you have the property manager now just going to the different properties, and you're kind of looking at it from a little bit further off now because you have more going on, or how does that work?
Yeah. So I used to be the property manager for all of our properties, and like then I stepped back to do some W-2 work for a while. So I'm technically a silent investor at this point. I can basically be a passive investor on most of my houses at this point. So we do have a primary property manager who does all of that for us. So she's the one who's filling the room. She's the one who's going every month, walking through the property and doing that. But yeah, so like we do have that property manager who she's in communication with all of the tenants. She knows what's going on in all of the houses. She's keeping track of things and making sure that they all have all of their common communal supplies
Right.
and everything. So yeah.
Right. Okay, so because you already had the system set up, and it kind of sounds like you created a lot of this. You developed it yourself, you and your partner. When you thought, okay, now it's time to bring a property manager in, how did you find that beautiful person?
I
that,
know, right? Oh man, yeah, that's a hard one. And we went
yeah.
through a couple of folks first before
Okay.
like we got to the one that we're at. And she was one of our residents first. She was living in one of the houses. And she was just so on point with everything. She was super communicative, and like so we were finally like, hey, do you want a job?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how we found her. But like I believe the other two, like at least two of the gals, including myself, like we were just friends with someone to
Yeah.
like my business partner to like get the position. But
Yeah.
yeah, it takes a lot to find the right person. But then we had to train her, and like
Yeah.
get her up to speed on everything. Like here's all the systems and how to do everything, and she's helped improve the systems a ton as well. So like it's a process for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And how long has she been doing that for you?
I think I think our primary property manager for at least 2.5, maybe 3 years now.
Wow. Okay. Very nice.
Yeah.
So you mentioned third party, and so you have your own properties, but now you're also helping other people who own their properties. And so is your property manager also managing their property? Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, she is.
Gotcha. Wow. So you actually, so you would probably have a company just to do the property management part,
Yep.
separate from the companies that are owning the properties. That
Yes.
okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Okay,
100. So yeah,
very nice.
yeah, it works out really well. And what we do is our property management style is called household led property management. So it makes it possible for her to manage a lot more houses, just because she doesn't have to live in them and she doesn't have to like be the house mom and kind of handle all that drama. We have them kind of handling themselves. That's why the conflict resolution systems work so well. So she's even able to handle a lot more doors.
That's such a good point, because I know people have asked, well, how are you going to be able to handle adding more doors, right? And a big part of all of this is the fact that you have all of these unrelated people in a property. And so conflict, like you said, it's a natural thing. And so whatever you can do to mitigate that. For example, I have every cabinet labeled so that each room has their own space in the cabinets. Same thing with the refrigerators, right? The bathrooms, we've got little cubbies in the cabinets of the bathrooms so that they have their space to put their toiletries and stuff in. And then you mentioned the chores. They have their point system, and they're managing the chores. Any other ideas for how the house is managing it so that the property manager is not having to do as much?
I mean, yeah, that's a lot of it, is like having those spaces already labeled, already laid out. Like we also do like stickers, if like little colored stickers for each individual room. So like if you need to leave your milk in the door of the fridge instead of like on your shelf, you can, everybody knows that's yours. Or like on the counter or something like that. So there's yeah, it's all about having those systems and those labels. And like
Yeah.
we also try to mitigate, like we only ever have 3 adults per bathroom. So like no more than 3 adults per bathroom, because otherwise it gets real gross real fast. And
Yeah.
there's a lot more conflict because like more people using one bathroom, just it's
Right.
harder.
Right.
Yeah. So, and like we have extra storage space too. So one of the things, like we will rent out the garage, like the garage stall or stalls as
Mhm.
the case may be, but there's usually enough room in the back, even with a single car garage, that we put in like 3 of those five tier muscle rack shelves or whatever that
Oh,
you can
yeah.
get at Home Depot. Yeah. And just give everybody a shelf on that, and then they can keep their camping gear in the garage. And we're in
Mm.
Colorado, people camp.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, so they can keep a lot of that stuff out there, and it makes it a little bit easier too, because then they have that little bit of extra space.
Yeah. Do you
So
charge for the extra space, or that's just a part of it?
that's just a part of it. But we do charge for the garage stall, but we don't charge for that like tier, that
Yeah.
muscle rack or whatever in the garage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So then, we've talked a lot about your systems, and you've been doing this longer than PadSplat's been around, right? They've only been around a couple of years. And so we've touched on a couple of things that are different between PadSplit and the model that you have. One thing that I don't think we touched on yet is the maintenance part of it, right? So there's going to have to be, a leak or something that's going on with the property that clearly none of the members need to take care of. How does that get communicated, and how do you handle that?
Yeah. So the property management software that we have actually has that maintenance request stuff built
Ooh,
into it.
okay.
So that's been really nice. Yeah, the property management software has the maintenance request, it has the signing for leases, it has like the syndication out to different ads or marketing platforms and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's basically the same. Like they can either email us or they can put in a maintenance request. A lot of the times too, though, because we have people who like have own landscaping businesses or who have own whatever, like they have skills. So half the time, like if it's a clogged drain, they'll fix it themselves more often than not. So
Mm,
our maintenance costs are actually probably lower than normal, just because the people are taking better care of the house, because they care a
right,
little bit more, because they have that sense of community and that sense of like obligation to their housemates. So they
right.
care a little more and take better care of it.
Nice. Okay, yeah. So PadSplit also has the maintenance ticket kind of system, and you can add team members that maybe you're assigning those tasks to, and then you just move it kind of from in process to completion
Yeah.
when that's done, and so that's helpful. What are some other things that you do differently or have from PadSplit?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just that sense of community, and not taking away the primary living room or the primary dining room. The other difference is, I mean, we aim for those A and B neighborhoods. We aim for like the professionals and retirees and people who are just a little bit higher income level, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, so we're I mean, we're not charging that much more, but definitely aiming for that economic class, just because we get people who take better care of the houses that way. So
Yeah. How
that's
do
a
you
lot
deal
of
with the parking?
it. Yeah. So most of
They
our
all
houses,
have cars, I'm sure then, right? Probably work vehicles too. And yeah.
some of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of our houses have like a little gravel area off to the side. Not very many of them have that
Yeah.
though. A lot of our houses are on corner lots, and that's
Mm,
really the key, is like that corner lot makes it so that you have control of so many more parking spots. So yeah,
good
that's really
idea.
what we end up doing.
Okay, so being strategic with the properties that you're purchasing, you got those corner lots, enough space. So definitely no HOAs then, right?
Actually, we
What?
do. Yeah, we do have two houses in HOAs, but they are super lenient. You have to like read those CCRs, like if we got super lucky with the two that we're in. And we try to avoid them though. Like we
Yeah.
definitely try to avoid them as much as possible, but we got really lucky with the two that we're in, and they're very, very lenient, very, very cheap. But it's very hard to find those.
For
So
sure. Yeah. Yeah. You definitely got to read. Don't trust what the agent's telling you about what the HOA will do or not do. You have to definitely read that yourself and make sure. I am actually on the board for my primary. And so I've learned some things about how the HOA works. And the other part of this that can happen is you might be lucky and the HOA is pretty lenient, and then somebody else gets voted in and starts causing some trouble.
yeah,
So you can't even rely on the board. You really need to focus on what's in the CCNRs. Yeah, for
yeah, for
sure.
real. I would recommend avoiding them if at all possible. But yeah,
Yeah.
there are ways to find good ones. But
Yeah. So it sounds like the geography, right? Where's the property, those A and B neighborhoods, and that changes a little bit of the demographics. So you're probably not so concerned about if it's near work centers or bus stops or any of that kind of stuff. Um,
not
okay.
not as much. I mean, it's still definitely a bonus if we can be closer to a bus stop or closer to a grocery store, things
Yeah.
like that.
Okay.
But yeah, we're not. It's not a deal breaker to not be next to those things. But
Okay.
I would also say too, we're not in massive metro areas. Like I think the population's like 70,000 or maybe 130 at most. And then there's farmland in between us and the next town. So yeah,
So how did you know this was going to work?
everybody needs a place to live.
Well, that's
So,
true.
well, I mean, especially where we are. So I'm in Colorado, right? And I'm where we're at too, like rent for a single bedroom or even a studio is well over $1,000. It's like 1,500 half the time. So
Yeah.
like being able to make available those that like much cheaper rent is necessary, and it's needed everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and plus like if we were willing to live in it, like we figured other people would be too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So, you mentioned you had some stats
Oh,
that you found, and I'm curious, what does that look like?
yeah, I was looking at Pad Split's blog actually. So it was
Yeah.
directly on their blog, just looking to see like, okay, what's the average stay and what's their average, occupancy rate and everything.
Yeah.
And like their blog says specifically that their average stay is 6 to 8 months, whereas ours is 20 plus, or their average occupancy is around 80% and ours is 97. So
Mm,
it's different though. It depends on what you're going for, and
right.
every type is needed. Like there's so many different ways to do this, and they're all
Right.
good for different things. So
Right, right. And so I think you bring up a good point because the other big one that's out there, Sam Wiegert, right? I think a lot of people have heard of him in his program, and it's very much it's similar to what you're saying, right? It's a lot about the community. I think that what even with pad split, like I have pad split, but I'm trying to build that community atmosphere as well. I have the dining room and the workspace. I know other operators that are trying to do the exact same thing, where we want to make the most of the space that we have. And so it really also depends on how you're buying the property too, right? Because you might really need to make that living room another bedroom in order to get the numbers to really work for you. Whereas if you can get it sub 2, you can get really good terms on that purchase. Maybe you don't need to do that so much. Maybe you leave the common area space as is, and then you've got that ability to really have that greater community feel. I think that it sounds like, because you're going into different neighborhoods, it's not a direct competition really. You're in the A and B, whereas pad split's focusing more on like C, like maybe B, C, D neighborhoods. Where my pad split's in a B neighborhood. I got such a great deal on this property. It was like, except I didn't really want the pool, but it was like, oh, I can't say no. It's just such a good property, right?
Right.
But it's in a B neighborhood, and I really liked that. I didn't want to really focus on the CD neighborhoods, and that was a big part of why I did not jump on the pad split bandwagon right away, because that's what they were putting out there was, this is for CD neighborhoods. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to CD neighborhoods. And so when I learned more about it, and it was like, well, no, it can be B neighborhoods. And now I know people who are converting their vacation rentals, their short-term rentals, because they're having such difficulty with those. They're converting them to the pad split or co-living model, right? And they're nice properties, right? And they got them filled fast. So they're in like Scottsdale, they're in nice neighborhoods. Oh, yeah. So you can certainly do this in really any neighborhood. You really
Absolutely.
can. You don't need to limit yourself to it. I think it really depends on like how much you really want to do with the property, right? If
Right.
you want to keep it basic, then don't try doing basic in an A neighborhood.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've got an A neighborhood and you want to do a luxury version, go for it. Like people want that too. So
Yes. Those
yeah.
professionals, the young professionals, right? And really thinking about what your market's going to be, I think is a big part of this. Are you who do you want in these properties? And then you need to make sure that you're making that property enticing for those people,
Right.
right? So yeah, so it's really about how much you're going to want to put into it. Some people are saying you can get that increased occupancy by including a desk in the bedroom and maybe a small fridge in the bedroom, going ahead and having the TV or whatever in there, not just a bed and storage, clothes storage, right?
Right. Yeah.
So how much
Well,
does a host want to put into it?
yeah, absolutely. And on that note too, like what we've found is that a lot of people, especially the professionals, have their own bedroom set. They asked us to take the stuff that we put in there out. So like we
Ooh,
don't even furnish bedrooms anymore because they'll stay longer too. Like a lot of times if you're bringing your own bed, you don't want to move that. So
yeah.
like they stay a lot longer when they bring their own stuff.
That is such a good point. I do remember hearing that as well, where, they're it's not a temporary thing for them. They want a long-term place, and they're going to have their stuff that they're going to want to bring, not just clothes. They're going to have their own bit of furniture that they're going to want to bring, and I think that's such a good point, that if they're bringing their bed, they're not looking to move that every month or every even 3 months or 6 months. They're gonna keep it in place. I know
Right.
I don't want to move my bed. Oh,
I
good
know,
Lord.
right?
Okay.
It's heavy.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Um, I mean, co-living is awesome. Like I personally really love that we have the ability to foster community, and that we have the ability, like, that we've lived in our houses, we've lived our systems, so
Yes.
we like them. So
Yeah.
and it can work anywhere, and it can work with any socioeconomic class. Like if you want to do luxury, like especially with the community system, if you want to do luxury with that, awesome. If you want to just do like middle class with that, awesome. It works across the board. So,
Yeah.
and we put the same system in our sober living houses, and it works really well with those too. So
Ooh, yes. That could be a whole other separate podcast, just talking
all
about
right.
Yes, we should do that. All right. Well, how do people get a hold of you if they've got more questions about what you're doing and how you're doing it? What's the best way to get you?
Yeah, so our brand is LivingSmith. We are the gold standard in co-living property management and investing. And if they want to get a hold of me, it's jaci@livingsmithpro.com.
Yes. And that's Jackie, not JC,
Yes,
everybody.
it's Jackie.
Okay. Don't do what I did. Well,
Right.
thank you so much for joining me. This was wonderful. I appreciate it. And yeah, maybe we circle back and talk about sober living, because I know that there's a need for that as well, just as much for co-living, right? Europe's been doing co-living all this time, and we're now catching up to it. That's not going to go away,
Yeah.
right? And sober living is a very specific part of that,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, that would be good to check out. So
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and you have a wonderful day too.
Thanks. All right.